Elias Turner had spent most of his life riding across the wide and quiet lands of the Arizona Territory, and he believed he already knew every twist and bend of the riverbank. That morning, the sun had just started rising, spreading soft orange light over the cliffs, and the air felt cool and peaceful. Elias rode at a slow pace, letting his horse enjoy the calm water sounds nearby. He wasn't in a hurry. He had been driving cattle the week before, and today he simply wanted a quiet ride to clear his mind. As he followed the river, he hummed an old tune, thinking the day would pass without anything unusual happening. Then, as he rounded a bend, his horse suddenly lifted its head and paused. Elias looked ahead, wondering what had caught his horse's attention. At first, he didn't see anything, only the tall grass moving gently in the breeze and the surface of the river shining in the sunlight. But then he noticed a shape near the water, a person, kneeling on the ground. He slowed his horse to a halt. The figure was a woman. She didn't seem to notice him, or maybe she did, and chose to stay still. Elias felt a sudden sense of surprise, because travelers rarely came this deep along the river unless they had a reason. He could see she was gathering water with her hands, lifting it slowly to her face. Her long dark hair fell over her shoulders, and the sunlight made it shine in soft waves. Elias stayed still for a moment. He didn't want to startle her. He could tell from her clothing and her posture that she was Apache, someone from one of the local bands who traveled across this land long before cowboys and ranchers arrived. He had crossed paths with Apache families before, but never alone, and never like this. He cleared his throat softly, a gentle sound meant to show he was approaching with respect. His horse stepped forward carefully. The woman lifted her head and turned toward him. Her posture was calm, but her eyes were sharp and observant. She didn't look frightened, only cautious, the way someone might be when meeting a stranger in a quiet place. Elias raised one hand in a friendly gesture. "Morning," he said in a calm voice. He kept his tone easy, warm, and open, wanting to show he meant no harm. The woman studied him for a quiet moment. She didn't speak yet, but she didn't move away either. It was then that Elias noticed something that made him look closer, not in a worrying way, but in a concerned way. The woman's dress, though clearly made with care and decorated with small beads, looked torn in several places. Not ripped apart, not damaged by anything dangerous, but worn in a way that suggested she might have gone through a rough stretch of land. The edges of the cloth had small tears, like they had gotten caught on branches or rocks. Elias looked gently toward her clothes, then back to her face, making sure she understood he wasn't judging, only trying to understand if she needed help. "You all right?" he asked softly. The woman did not answer right away. Instead, she stood up slowly, giving herself time, as if she was testing how her body felt. When she rose fully, Elias noticed she held one hand lightly against her side, not tightly, not in pain, just gently, the way someone might touch a sore spot after a long walk. The river behind her made a soft, rushing sound, and a bird flew overhead, giving a short call that echoed across the cliffs. The moment felt strangely peaceful, as though the land itself was watching the encounter with quiet interest. Elias stepped down from his horse, moving slowly and respectfully. He didn't walk toward her right away. Instead, he stood beside his horse, waiting for a sign from her that it was all right to come closer. He knew better than to rush. Years of living near Apache land had taught him that respect was the strongest language he could offer. The woman finally spoke, her voice gentle but careful. "I am all right," she said. Her English was clear, though it carried the music of her own language behind it. Her answer was polite, but Elias could see she wasn't completely at ease. Anyone alone by the river might feel the same if a stranger rode up on horseback. He nodded, showing he accepted her words without doubt. "If you're sure. I just saw you there by the water, and wanted to make sure you didn't need anything." She watched him for a moment longer. Then her gaze softened a little, not fully trusting yet, but also not guarded like before. She dipped her head slightly in a polite greeting. "My name is Nashdoitso," she said. "I walk with the sun." She spoke the translation as well, perhaps so he would understand. Elias smiled kindly. That's a fine name. I'm Elias Turner. I'm Elias Turner. For a moment, they simply stood there, the cowboy by his horse, the Apache woman by the river, a soft breeze moving between them. It was a small moment, but it felt meaningful, as if two different worlds were quietly meeting in the middle. Elias glanced again at the torn edges of her dress. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, so he spoke gently. Looks like you've been through some tough brush, he said, keeping his words light so she knew he wasn't making assumptions. Nashdoitso looked down at her clothing, as if noticing the tears again. She touched one of the torn edges thoughtfully. The land was rough last night, she said. The storm came fast. I tried to find better ground, but the path was narrow. Elias nodded, thinking of the storm that had passed the night before. It had been quick but strong, with strong gusts of wind. He had taken shelter in an old barn, but someone traveling on foot might have had a harder time finding a safe place. You must have had a long walk to get here, he said. This part of the river isn't close to many trails. She nodded in agreement. My group traveled ahead. We were going to meet family farther upriver. When the storm came, I stayed behind to check a plant I needed. They went ahead, and I meant to follow. But the storm made the land slippery. Her words were calm, simple, and not dramatic in any way. She wasn't trying to make the story sound frightening or sad, just telling the truth as it happened. I hope you didn't get hurt, Elias said in a warm voice. She moved her arm gently, as if checking it. Only tired, she answered. And my dress caught on some rocks. Nothing more. Her tone was peaceful, with no worry behind it, which reassured Elias. Still, he felt it wasn't right to simply ride away. He didn't want to crowd her, but he also didn't want to leave someone alone who might still be worn out from walking through rough ground. If you need water or food, I have some, he offered. No pressure, just in case. For a moment, Nashduitso didn't respond. She looked at him as though trying to decide whether he was the kind of man who helped out of kindness, or the kind who helped for reasons she couldn't trust. Elias kept his expression open and gentle. He had nothing to hide, and he hoped she could see that. Finally, she gave a small nod. Water would be good. Elias reached into his saddlebag and pulled out his canteen. He didn't walk straight up to her. Instead, he set the canteen on a smooth stone halfway between them and stepped back. She walked forward, picked it up, and took a careful sip. Thank you, she said softly. You're welcome, he replied. The river continued to flow behind them, making the scene feel calm and natural. The trees rustled gently in the breeze, and sunlight sparkled on the water. Even though they came from different worlds, the moment felt comfortable, almost peaceful. Nashdoitso handed the canteen back, and Elias returned it to his saddlebag. For a moment, they simply stood there, listening to the river, not needing to rush the moment. Elias felt that this meeting was not an accident. Something about the quiet strength in the woman's eyes made him feel he had come around that bend for a reason. A gentle sense of responsibility settled in his chest, not because she seemed weak or helpless, but because every traveler deserved kindness when walking alone through a difficult landscape. The morning sun rose a little higher, warming the land, and Elias knew their paths had only just begun to cross. This simple encounter, him riding along the river, her kneeling by the water, felt like the first page of a story neither of them had expected. Elias stood quietly for a moment, watching Nashduitso as she returned to the river's edge. She dipped her hands into the cool water again, letting it run softly across her fingers. The sun had risen higher now, brightening the land and warming the cool air. The river sparkled under the light, and the sky above looked wide and endless. Elias felt that this calm moment would not last long, because something in the woman's posture told him there was more to her situation than she had shared. He didn't want to push her with questions, so he simply stayed close enough to talk if she wished, but far enough to give her comfort and space. His horse grazed on a patch of grass nearby, making soft chewing sounds that blended peacefully with the river. After a few minutes, Nashdoitso stood up carefully and took a deep breath. She placed her hand lightly on her arm again, the same gentle way she had done before. Elias noticed it. He didn't see any marks or anything troubling, but he could tell she was protecting that side of her body a bit. It wasn't serious, he guessed, but maybe sore from walking in the storm. "You sure you're feeling all right?" he asked softly, keeping his voice gentle so she didn't feel pressured. She looked over at him, her expression calm but thoughtful. "I am fine," she said, though there was a quiet tiredness behind her words. "Just need rest." Elias nodded. He respected her strength. He could see that she wasn't someone who complained, not even when she had walked through rough ground with her clothing torn and her arms strained. She carried herself with a calm dignity that reminded him of the old stories ranch hands used to tell about the endurance and wisdom of the Apache people. "You must have walked a long way last night," Elias said, trying not to sound too curious. She nodded slowly. "The storm came late. I thought it would pass, but the wind pushed me toward the rocks. The path I used was narrow, and the wind made the ground slippery. I kept walking until the sky grew dark, and I could not see the trails well, so I stayed near the river when I found it." Elias imagined her walking alone under the storm, following only the sound of the river to guide her. He had been through storms himself, and even with a horse and a lantern, the night could feel confusing. For her to make it to the river on foot, keeping calm the whole way, said a lot about her experience and bravery. "Did your group know you stayed behind?" he asked gently. "They knew I wanted to look for a plant that grows only in certain places," she said. "It is used to help with stomach sickness. My family to the north needed it. I told my group I would catch up, but the storm came too fast, and they had to keep moving before the ground became too soft." Elias listened with genuine interest. He respected people who traveled with purpose, especially for family. The idea of her walking alone through rough terrain in search of a healing plant made him admire her even more. "Do you think they're worried about you?" he asked. She looked toward the north, where the land stretched far beyond the river, filled with hills, trees, and distant ridges. "They know I am careful," she said, "and they know I follow the land well. I think they will wait for me at the resting place near the tall cottonwood tree." Elias knew the tree she was talking about. It was a large, old tree that grew by a bend in the river, its branches spreading wide like welcoming arms. Travelers often used it as a meeting place because it could be seen from far away. "That's still a long walk from here," Elias said gently, "especially if you're tired." Nashdoitso didn't argue or try to sound stronger than she was. She simply nodded. "It is far, but I can reach it if I follow the river." Elias didn't doubt her ability, but he also knew the land better than many. The riverbank became rocky in certain places, and some areas were difficult to cross. She could do it, yes, but it would take time, and she might become more tired before she arrived. "Would you mind if I walk with you for a while?" he asked carefully. "Just until the land gets easier. My horse could carry some weight if you need it. I'm not trying to trouble you. I just don't feel right leaving you to walk all that distance alone after a storm." She studied him again, her eyes calm but thoughtful. Elias stood steady, letting her read his expression. He didn't rush her decision. He understood that trust was not something gained quickly, especially between two people from different worlds. Finally, she gave a soft, small nod. "You may walk with me," she said. For a little while, a warm sense of relief touched Elias's chest, not because he doubted her strength, but because he didn't want her to face a long and tiring path alone. He gently gathered his horse's reins, and Nashdoitso stepped closer to the riverbank where the trail began. They started walking side by side, keeping a comfortable distance. The river flowed beside them, sometimes quietly, sometimes rushing over small stones. The sunlight shimmered on the surface like tiny dancing stars. The sky above them was a bright blue, with a few soft clouds floating slowly across it. As they walked, Nashdoitso pointed out small details around them: plants used for healing, signs of deer tracks, marks on the ground left by birds. She spoke calmly and softly, almost as if she was talking to the land itself as much as to Elias. Her knowledge impressed him. She didn't look for paths with her eyes alone. She read the ground through tiny clues that most people never noticed. Elias found himself learning from her as they walked. He had spent years riding cattle trails and exploring the region, yet she saw things he had never noticed. She showed him a plant with bright yellow petals and explained that its roots helped ease tired muscles. Then she pointed to the way the grass leaned near the water, showing which direction the light wind was drifting. "Your people know this land well," Elias said, sincerely impressed. She nodded. We walk with the land, not against it. The land speaks if you listen. I suppose you're right, Elias said with a small smile. I've lived here years, and I still miss half the things you notice. Elias, her lips curved into a gentle, almost shy smile. You listen better than many. Elias appreciated the kindness in her words. Their steps fell into an easy rhythm, neither rushing nor slowing too much. The river guided them forward with its soft sound, and their conversation came naturally simple, honest, and peaceful. As the morning turned into midday, they reached a part of the river where the banks rose slightly, forming a small overlook. Nashdoitso paused to rest there, placing a hand on a smooth rock. Elias stopped too, giving her time to breathe. Is the band of your dress catching when you walk? He asked gently, noticing how she adjusted it. She looked down at the torn edges and gave a small sigh, not sad, just thoughtful. It is a little rough now, she admitted. But it is all right. Elias reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small sewing kit he carried for repairing his own gear. He held it out without stepping too close. If you want, I can fix it a bit for you. Just enough so the cloth doesn't bother you while walking. She looked at the kit, then at him, considering. After a short moment, she gave a small nod of appreciation. Yes, thank you. Elias set to work, carefully stitching small sections where the cloth had torn. He didn't try to change the design or do anything fancy. He simply reinforced the edges so the dress would stop catching on branches or rocks. Nashdoitso watched him quietly, and her expression softened as she saw his careful attention. You sew well, she said softly. My mother taught me, Elias replied with a gentle smile. She said a cowboy who can't fix his own clothes will spend half his pay buying new ones. Nashdoitso smiled a little wider, a warm and genuine expression. When he finished, he stood and stepped back respectfully. Should feel better now, he said. She touched the repaired edges and nodded. It does. Thank you. They continued walking, and the afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the land. Elias could tell she was beginning to trust him more, not because of anything he said, but because of how gently he treated every moment. Never rushing, never questioning too deeply, always offering respect. As they walked, Nashdoitso shared more about her family waiting upriver. She spoke of her younger brother, who loved to carve figures from wood. She mentioned her aunt, who taught her the meaning of certain plants, and her mother, who taught her songs for calmness. Each detail felt like a small window into her world, and Elias listened with sincere interest. He shared a few stories as well about the ranch he worked on, the cattle drives he had led, and his favorite quiet places along the ridges. He spoke simply, honestly, and Nashdoitso listened with quiet attention. The more they spoke, the more natural the connection became, as if the land itself encouraged their paths to walk together for a while. The sun began lowering toward the western sky, painting everything with warm golden light. By then, the trail ahead opened into a wider stretch of land. Elias knew that soon they would reach the easier part of the journey, where the ground leveled out. He also knew that meant their time walking together would not last forever. The sun drifted lower in the sky, spreading a soft golden glow across the land. As Elias and Nashdoitso continued walking beside the river, the trail had become wider and smoother, and the sound of the water seemed calmer now, almost like it was guiding them forward. Elias walked beside his horse, letting the animal move easily over the soft ground. Nashdoitso walked a little ahead at times, then slowed again, as if she were reading the land with careful eyes. Every now and then, she would point out small signs on the ground, tiny footprints of a rabbit, a pattern in the sand made by wind, or the soft bend in the grass that showed where an animal had rested. Elias found himself watching the ground more than usual, trying to see what she saw. He soon realized she didn't just look at the land, she understood it like an old friend. You learn fast, she said after he noticed a fresh deer track without her pointing it out. He chuckled softly. I'm trying. You see everything. She gave a gentle smile. The land speaks. You listen. Her words came softly, but they carried a kind of wisdom that made Elias pause. He realized that, Even after years of living in the territory, he had only learned the surface of the land. She, however, knew how to follow the quiet stories hidden beneath it. They walked for a while without talking, simply enjoying the peaceful afternoon. The river glimmered under the warm sunlight, and the air was filled with the gentle rustle of leaves. They passed under trees whose branches formed a loose canopy, letting beams of light dance on the ground. Birds chirped from high branches, and distant insects hummed in a soft, steady rhythm. At one point, Nashtoitso stopped to rest near a large, flat rock. Elias paused as well, giving her time to breathe. She touched her arm again, checking it with gentle fingers, as if making sure she wasn't pushing herself too much. "Your arm still hurting?" Elias asked in a calm, kind tone. "Just a little tired," she replied. "The climb last night was hard, but it will be fine." Elias nodded. He could tell she didn't want to worry him, yet he also sensed she appreciated his concern. He offered her another sip of water from his canteen, and she accepted it with a small nod of gratitude. After she drank, she took a moment to let the coolness settle in her. The land ahead opened into a wide stretch of grass, and a soft breeze moved through it like a gentle wave. Nashtoitso took a deep breath, as if the open space gave her new strength. "My group will be happy when I reach them," she said quietly. "I'm sure they will," Elias replied. "Family always worries, even when they know you're strong." She looked at him with thoughtful eyes. "Do you have family waiting for you?" Elias hesitated for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I have 2 sisters living in another town, and some cousins who help with the ranch. My parents passed a few years back. I guess the ranch hands are the closest thing I have to family now." "Do you visit your sisters?" she asked kindly. "Sometimes," Elias said. "Not as much as I should. Work keeps me busy." Nashtoitso nodded with understanding. "Life keeps everyone busy, but hearts remember." Her simple words touched Elias more deeply than he expected. He smiled softly, feeling a warmth settle in his chest. He admired her gentle way of speaking, calm, thoughtful, and filled with quiet truths. As they continued walking, Elias noticed something on the ground, small, flat stones arranged in a curve. He stopped and crouched down to look at them. "Someone placed these on purpose," he said. Nashtoitso stepped closer and studied the stones with him. "Yes," she said. "My people sometimes mark paths like this so others know they are close. These are old, but they show we are on the right way." "That's good," Elias said. "Means you'll reach them soon." "Yes," she said softly, though Elias noticed her expression had a mix of relief and something else, perhaps a quiet sadness that their journey together would end soon. Elias felt it too. He had grown used to her presence, to her calm strength and soft voice. Their steps had fallen into such a natural rhythm that it almost felt strange to imagine walking the rest of the trail alone. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky into shades of soft orange and pale gold. Shadows stretched long across the ground. They passed a small grove of cottonwood trees where the leaves flickered like little coins in the wind. The river beside them made a gentle, steady sound. Nashtoitso slowed her steps and looked toward the horizon. "We are getting closer," she said quietly. Elias followed her gaze. In the distance, he could see the tall cottonwood tree she had mentioned earlier, standing proudly near a bend in the river. Even from far away, it looked strong and welcoming. "That's a beautiful tree," Elias said. "It has been there longer than many families," she replied softly. "My people say it remembers every traveler who rests under it." As they walked closer, Elias could see how the land changed slightly around the tree. The grass grew thicker, the ground felt softer, and the river widened beside it, creating a calm pool of clear water. The area felt peaceful in a way that made Elias believe the stories about the tree might be true. Nashtoitso paused as they neared the cottonwood. Her eyes moved thoughtfully around the area, searching for signs of her group. She didn't seem anxious, only observant. She walked to the edge of the small clearing and knelt down to study the ground. "They were here," she said. "Look." Elias stepped closer. She pointed to footprints, different sizes, some small like children, others larger. The prints were fresh, but not very recent. They rested here earlier today, she explained. Maybe in the morning, before the sun was high. Elias felt relieved for her. That means you're close. She nodded. They may still be uphill. They follow the path to a family camp near the northern ridge. Elias looked toward the trail that led away from the cottonwood tree. It climbed gently upward, winding through a stretch of trees and disappearing behind a hill. Do you want to rest here before continuing? He asked softly. Nashdoitso looked at the water, then at the shade of the large tree. Yes. A little rest would be good. Elias set his gear down and let his horse drink from the river. Nashdoitso sat beneath the cottonwood tree, her back resting against its strong trunk. Elias joined her a few steps away, giving her the peaceful space she seemed to like. The air felt cooler under the branches, and the leaves above made a soft rustling music, like a gentle lullaby. For a long while, they sat in comfortable silence. The moment felt warm and still, as if time itself slowed around them. After some quiet minutes, Nashdoitso spoke, her voice soft and thoughtful. You do not meet strangers by accident. Elias looked up at her with curiosity. What do you mean? In my people's way, she said. We believe paths cross when there is a reason. Maybe a small reason. Maybe a big one. But never without meaning. Elias took in her words slowly. I think I believe that, he said quietly. I didn't expect to meet anyone this morning, but I'm glad I did. She turned her head slightly, and the warm glow of the sunlight through the leaves touched her face. I am glad too, she said in a gentle tone. Elias felt a gentle emotion rise in his chest, not fast or dramatic, but slow and warm, like the way sunlight spreads across a field at dawn. He felt honored that she trusted him enough to walk with him, to share stories, and to rest by his side under the old cottonwood tree. After their rest, Nashdoitso stood up slowly, testing her strength. She seemed steadier now, less tired than before. Elias rose too, taking hold of his horse's reins. You ready to finish the walk? He asked kindly. She nodded. Yes. The camp is not far from here. They began walking toward the trail that led up the gentle rise. The light from the setting sun painted the land in deep gold and soft pink. Their steps matched again, easy and natural. As they moved along the path, Elias felt the moment growing quiet inside him. He knew their time together might end soon, but he wanted to make sure she reached her people safely before turning back toward his own life. The land ahead curved around a small hill, and Nashdoitso's eyes brightened as she looked forward. There was something ahead, something familiar to her, and Elias knew they were very close to the place she called home. Elias and Nashdoitso continued along the gentle trail, moving toward the small rise that hid the northern ridge from view. The late afternoon sunlight wrapped the land in soft golden colors. The shadows of the trees stretched long and thin across the ground, as if showing them the way forward. The air felt cooler now, touched by evening breeze, and the sound of the river behind them grew softer as they walked away from it. Elias sensed how quiet Nashdoitso had become, not in a troubled way, more like someone preparing to return to a familiar world. Her steps were steady, but he noticed she walked with a new lightness, as though hope had lifted some of the weight from her shoulders. Every few minutes, she glanced ahead with thoughtful eyes, searching for something she expected to see. You think they're very close now? Elias asked gently, careful not to interrupt her thoughts. Yes, she said with a soft nod. We are almost there. My people always choose places where the air is calm and the trees offer shade. This ridge has both. Elias looked around and could see why her people liked the area. The trail wound upward through tall pines and cottonwoods, and the breeze carried the scent of leaves and earth. It felt peaceful, like a place where families would gather around evening fires or share stories in the soft light of dusk. They walked for a few more minutes, following the curve of the land. Then, suddenly, Nashdoitso paused. She raised her hand gently, signaling Elias to stop. Her eyes fixed on something ahead. Elias stood still, waiting for her to speak. "Look there," she said softly. At first, Elias didn't see anything. Then he noticed a thin strand of smoke rising above the trees, not thick or dark, just a quiet line drifting into the soft sky. It came from somewhere beyond the rise. "That must be your camp," Elias said, feeling a warm sense of relief. "Yes," she answered. "That is my people's fire. They are waiting." Her voice held a mixture of joy and calmness. She took a slow breath and continued walking. A little quicker now, though not rushing. Elias followed beside her, leading his horse. He felt happy for her, but a small part of him also felt something else, something he didn't want to name yet. Something he wasn't sure she felt too. They reached the top of the rise, and the land opened before them in a quiet, welcoming way. A small cluster of simple shelters sat nestled between trees, and a few figures moved gently around a fire at the center of the clearing. Children's voices carried softly through the air, light laughter that sounded warm and familiar. Nash Doitso stopped again, looking down at the scene with soft eyes. Elias watched her expression, seeing the calm joy settle into her face. She was home. "Do you want to go ahead?" Elias asked kindly. "I can wait here, if that feels better." She turned toward him, thoughtful. "No," she said softly. "Walk with me. It is right." Her words carried gentle sincerity, and Elias nodded. Together, they walked down the slope toward the camp. As they stepped into the clearing, the sound of quiet voices grew stronger. A few people turned at the sound of their footsteps. Then one woman, older and wrapped in a soft shawl, stood up from beside the fire. Her eyes widened with relief, and she hurried forward. "Nash Doitso," she called in her own language, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. Nash Doitso smiled warmly and stepped into the woman's arms. The embrace was gentle but full of love. The older woman touched Nash Doitso's face, her shoulders, and her hair, as if making sure she was truly there and truly safe. Elias stepped back a little, giving them space. He watched quietly, feeling grateful he had been able to help her reach her family. More people gathered, two children with bright eyes, a young man with a carved walking stick, and a couple who looked like they might be distant relatives. Their faces showed warm relief. Nash Doitso spoke to them in her language, explaining where she had been and how she got separated during the storm. She pointed toward Elias, speaking gently, and the others turned to look at him. Elias removed his hat politely and offered a small, respectful nod. The young man stepped forward first. He extended his hand toward Elias in a friendly gesture. "Thank you," he said in clear English. "You helped her reach us." Elias shook his hand warmly. "She did most of the walking," he replied with a small smile. "I was just company along the way." The young man smiled back, clearly appreciating his humility. An older man with kind eyes approached next. He placed his hand over his heart in a respectful greeting. Elias responded with the same gesture. Remembering how some Apache elders greeted travelers, the man gave him a gentle nod that carried deep meaning, a silent thank you spoken without words. Nash Doitso returned to Elias's side after greeting her family. She looked calm and peaceful now, as though a weight had lifted from her. "You walked far with me," she said softly. "My family thanks you." "It was no trouble," Elias said warmly. "I'm glad I happened to come along the river when I did." "Sometimes," she said gently, "the land brings the right people together." Elias smiled at her words. "Maybe so." As evening grew darker, her people prepared a small meal around the fire. The smell of warm food drifted through the air, mixed with the scent of pine needles and fresh grass. The children played quietly nearby, their laughter like tiny bells in the soft twilight. A few members of the group invited Elias to sit with them. He hesitated at first, not wanting to intrude, but Nash Doitso gave him an encouraging nod. "You are welcome here," she said. So Elias sat with them around the fire. They shared simple foods, fresh berries, warm bread made from ground seeds, and a gentle stew that warmed the stomach. Everything tasted like comfort and peace. As they ate, Nash Doitso's family asked gentle questions about Elias's journey and the lands he had traveled. He answered with respect and honesty, telling them simple stories about ranch work, long rides, and quiet mornings on the plains. They listened with calm interest. And in return, Nashdoitso's aunt shared a few stories about the ridge, its plants, and the animals that lived near the river. The fire crackled softly, and fireflies began to glow among the trees. Elias felt a deep sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Not the kind that comes from silence, but the kind that comes from being welcomed with kindness. As the night deepened, Nashdoitso walked a short distance away from the fire and looked up at the sky. Elias followed her, giving her space but staying close enough to talk. The stars came out slowly, one by one, bright and clear against the darkening sky. "You must be tired," Elias said gently. "After such a long day." "I am," she admitted softly, "but it is a good tired." Elias nodded. "You're safe now. I'm glad." She looked at him with warmth in her eyes. "I would not have reached this place today without you." "You would have made it," he said with a quiet smile. "You're stronger than you think." "Maybe," she said with a soft laugh. "But you helped when I needed a friend on the trail." Her words touched something deep inside Elias. The simple word friend felt gentle, but meaningful. He realized that what they shared on the trail had become more than just a journey. It had become a quiet connection, built through trust, kindness, and the soft understanding that sometimes happens without loud words. The camp grew quieter as families settled into their shelters for the night. The fire continued to glow softly, casting warm light across the ground. Nashdoitso turned to Elias and said, "Tomorrow, I will walk with my people to the family camp farther north. It is peaceful there. You should rest tonight. You traveled far, too." Elias nodded. "I'll rest near the riverbank with my horse. I don't want to intrude on your camp." "You are not intruding," she said kindly. "But I understand." She looked at him one more time, her expression soft but filled with quiet gratitude. "May the path be gentle for you, Elias Turner," she said in her calm voice. "And for you, Nashdoitso," he replied. She gave him a warm smile before turning back toward her family. Elias watched her walk toward the firelight, her figure steady and peaceful. He felt something warm settle in his heart. Something he couldn't quite name, but something gentle and lasting. He knew their paths might soon go separate ways, yet something told him the memory of this journey would stay with him long after he returned to his own world. The night settled quietly over the land, wrapping the trees and hills in a soft blanket of darkness. Elias had made a small resting place near the river, close enough to hear the calm sound of flowing water but far enough to give Nashdoitso's family their space and privacy. His horse grazed nearby, relaxed and comfortable after a long day. The stars above shone brightly, filling the sky with tiny sparkling lights. Elias lay on his blanket, hands folded behind his head, staring up at the endless sky. He thought about the long walk he had taken with Nashdoitso. Every moment came back to him, the way she moved through the land with quiet grace, the gentle wisdom in her words, the warm smile she offered when she felt at peace. He felt grateful to have crossed paths with her. He knew their worlds were different, yet somehow, for a short time, their steps had matched perfectly. As he listened to the soft river and the distant hum of the camp, Elias realized how rare it was to meet someone who made the world feel lighter just by walking beside you. He closed his eyes and let the peaceful sounds settle around him like a comforting blanket. Eventually, sleep came softly, without hurry. When morning arrived, the sky turned pale pink and gold. Birds began their early songs, filling the air with gentle music. Elias woke slowly, stretching his arms and breathing in the fresh morning air. The river glimmered under the sunrise, and a thin mist floated above the water, giving the world a dreamlike look. He packed his blanket and checked his horse's saddle. Though he wasn't in a rush, he knew he would soon have to continue his own journey. He took a moment to appreciate the quiet beauty around him. Trees glowing in early sunlight, cool air brushing against his skin, and the scent of morning dew rising from the grass. As he finished preparing, he heard soft footsteps approaching. He turned and saw Nashdoitso walking toward him. The morning light made her dark hair shine softly, and her calm expression reflected the peace of the new day. She carried a small basket in her hands. "Good morning, Elias," she said in her gentle voice. "Good morning," he replied with a warm smile. You're up early. My people wake with the sun, she said with a small smile of her own. I brought something for you. She held out the basket. Inside were fresh berries, a small piece of handmade bread, and a tiny carved figure made from smooth wood. It was carved in the shape of a small bird, wings folded gently as if resting. Elias touched the bird carefully, admiring the smooth surface and fine details. This is beautiful, he said. Did you make it? My younger brother carved it, she said. He wanted you to have it. He says it is a symbol of safe travels. Elias felt touched by the gesture. Please thank him for me. This means a lot. Nashdoitso nodded. I will. She sat down on a flat stone nearby, and Elias joined her. The sunlight was soft and warm, and the sound of the river made the moment feel peaceful and complete. My people will leave soon, she said quietly. We will walk to the family camp, farther north. Elias nodded slowly. He had known this time would come, yet now that it was here, it felt different. A gentle heaviness settled in his chest. Not painful, just full of meaning. And I guess I'll be riding back toward the ranch, he said. She looked at him, her eyes steady and calm. You have your path, she said. And I have mine. But the land remembers the steps we shared. Elias thought about her words. They carried a kind of truth he could feel deeply. I'll remember them too, he said quietly. Every one of them. A comfortable silence settled between them. The river glowed under the rising sun. Leaves rustled lightly as a morning breeze passed through the trees. Elias felt time slow again. The way it did when something important was happening, something you wanted to hold on to just a little longer. Nashdoitso looked out at the water and spoke softly. When I walked alone last night, I felt the land moving around me. The storm, the rocks, the cold air. I listened to all of it. But this morning feels different. It feels calm, like the land is thankful. Elias turned to her. Thankful for what? For kindness, she said simply. For steps shared with care. For the way you walked beside me without hurry, without fear, without judgment. Elias felt his throat tighten slightly, not with sadness, but with a quiet emotion he didn't often let himself feel. You made it easy, he said. It felt right to walk with you. She smiled softly. Yes, it felt right. A group of her family members began packing their things in the distance. Children laughed softly as they helped gather blankets and small baskets. The scene looked warm and full of life, like a gentle painting of morning peace. Elias stood slowly and walked to his horse, tightening the saddle strap and checking the reins. Nashdoitso watched quietly, holding the small woven handle of her basket. He turned back to her. Before I go, he said, I want you to know, if you ever walk near the river again, and you see a cowboy riding by, it might be me. She smiled gently at his words, the kind of smile that held warmth without needing many explanations. And if I see you, she said, I will greet you as a friend. The simple word friend held a deep sweetness, and Elias felt it settle warmly inside him. He knew they would carry this quiet bond even after stepping into their separate worlds. Nashdoitso walked a little closer, her hands folded calmly in front of her. I want to give you something else, she said softly. She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a small piece of cloth carefully folded, smooth, and decorated with simple hand-stitched designs. She placed it gently in Elias's hand. My mother makes these, she explained. It is a blessing cloth. It carries good thoughts for the person who keeps it. It will remind you that the path can be gentle, even when it is long. Elias held the cloth carefully. I'll keep it safe, he said. She nodded, looking into his eyes with calm sincerity. And it will keep you safe. Another quiet moment passed. The land around them seemed to hold its breath, as if honoring the peaceful connection formed between two people from different worlds. Finally, Nashdoitso stepped back. Your path waits, she said softly. And yours, Elias replied. He placed the carved bird and the blessing cloth carefully into his saddlebag. Then he mounted his horse and held the reins loosely. Not quite ready to ride away just yet. Nashdoitso stood with her hands at her sides, peaceful and graceful in the morning light. "If our paths cross again," Elias said gently, "I'll be glad." "They will cross when the land decides," she answered with a soft smile. He nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle comfortably in his heart. With one last warm look, Elias guided his horse forward. The gentle thud of hooves began to carry him away from the riverbank. He didn't rush. Every few steps, he glanced back. Nashdoitso stood still, watching him with calm eyes. Her figure, framed by the quiet beauty of the waking land. When he looked back one final time, she raised her hand in a small, peaceful gesture of farewell. Elias lifted his hand too. A warm goodbye carried silently through the morning air. The trail opened before him, curving gently through the hills. The land felt familiar, yet somehow different. Now softer, kinder, as if touched by the quiet strength of the woman he had walked beside. He knew their worlds might never meet again. But he also knew something certain. He would never forget the Apache woman he found by the river. He would never forget her calm voice, her gentle wisdom, or the way she taught him to listen to the land more carefully. And he would always remember the torn dress that led him to stop, to help, and to share a journey that changed the quiet corners of his heart. As he rode on, the morning sun rose higher, lighting his path with warm, golden light. And in the distance behind him, Nashdoitso walked toward her family, carrying with her the same light, the same peace, and the same memory of a cowboy who came along at exactly the right moment. Their paths moved apart, but the story they shared stayed alive, held gently between the river, the land, and the soft morning sky.